Someone woke up with an attitude.
Cancel culture is cancelled.
You know what woke means? It means you're a loser.
Why do you think you haven't been cancelled yet? I don't know. What's being cancelled?
Wake up.
Welcome back to the Woke What Cancel This podcast. Yes, we are from the USA, where supposedly we have free speech and freedom of expression, but we're being groomed to think and act one way, and that's wrong. Because you know what? The USA is not communist. We do not have to follow the rule of the government and what the higher-ups say that we need to believe. Because you know what? We're human. We are free to think and act for ourselves. And as long as we don't physically hurt others, hey, that's the way of the world, baby. So let's do it. And, of course, I do want to remind you, a quick disclosure, that this podcast is based on opinion and fact. We invite you to form your own opinion, all right? Whatever you believe is what you believe. You are absolutely allowed to do that. I am not going to tell you to believe one way or another, because you know what? You are your own individual person. You have every right to believe in what you believe, whether it's right or it's wrong. But I will say this, do the research, all right? Don't just believe something because somebody says it and take that to heart and say, oh my God, because that's what mainstream media wants us to do, all right? And this goes back to the whole thing of, yeah, we're being groomed. We're being told this is the way we have to think. This is the way that we have to do it. And again, that is absolutely wrong. On today's episode, which, by the way, we're already on episode 7, we're going to talk about male athletes who identify as transgender competing in women's sports. This is a hot-button issue right now. And I want to start off by saying this. I have friends who are trans. Okay, I am not racist. I am not against the LGBTQ community in any way, shape, or form. Everybody should be able to live life the way they want to live it. Love is love. You are individual. You are amazing. You are your own person. So whatever you may take from this podcast, believe this. Go on doing what you want to do, being the person that you want to be. However, when you start threatening another sex, and yes, just because you're trans doesn't mean you're God's gift to people of the earth. Same thing, just because you're gay or heterosexual or whatever, nobody is above anybody else. We fail to realize that as a human race. We are all human. We are all individual. We should be loving one another, but the problem is the way things are going right now, we are being divided on a daily basis. We are moving further away from wanting to be close to people, from wanting to get close to groups and organizations because we feel alienated. You know what? I'm white. I'm proud to be white. But am I allowed to go down the street wearing a white pride t-shirt? Absolutely not. Because you know what? The proverbial shit would hit the fan if I did that. But we should be allowed to. If people can go down the street wearing a Black Lives Matter shirt, why can't I go down the street saying White Lives Matter? Because it's a double standard. And to a lot of people, they think, oh my God, that's wrong. But again, this is why we are being groomed to think a particular way. And I can't stand it. It drives me absolutely crazy. So, our question, should transgender athletes compete in women's sports? Absolutely not. I am going to come right out and say this right now. I am not athletic. I watch football and occasionally hockey. But this is bigger than you or I. Are there two genders? Absolutely. There's male and female. I posted a news story from Fox News about a 12-year-old kid that was asked to leave school and change his shirt because the shirt said there are two genders. There are only two genders. But because that offended some people, he was asked to leave school. And of course, he didn't want to do it. He didn't want to change his shirt. Why? Because it offends one group or the other. Everything comes down to science. Science does not lie. Data does not lie. Can people fudge numbers? Abso-frickin-lutely. Can they deny the truth of science? Well, they really shouldn't, because science is there for a reason. Science is based on facts. So, in the news right now, and has been for quite some time, collegiate athlete Leah Thomas, biological male transitioned to a woman, winning women's sports. Do you see anything wrong with that? I mean, come on. Let's face it. The guy was born a male. He decided, you know what? I'm not happy being a male. I'm going to transition to a woman. So he didn't win anything when he was a male athlete. So he transitions to a woman, gets put into women's athletics, and all of a sudden he's breaking records. Why? It's plain and simple. The science is there, folks. The science is there on that. Men have a biological advantage over women. Why? Well, it's quite simple. Men have bigger muscles, bigger muscle mass. We have the hormones. We have bigger lungs. We have bigger hearts that are going to allow us to breathe in more oxygen, to get more speed, to get more red blood cells pumping throughout our body so we can dominate, so we can do that, so we can rise above. Am I saying women athletes are not as good as men? Absolutely not. There are women out there that can kick our ass, and it's absolutely amazing. But you know what? Women have worked so hard to get where they are, and now we're going backwards in time. We're taking away the rights of women athletes. Why? Just so we can please this one group of wannabe women. Now, I know what you're thinking. I may be a little bit insensitive to this, and I'm really not. But think of it this way. You remember back in the day, maybe you did, maybe you didn't, you got your mother's clothing, or maybe your grandmother's clothing, hat, shoes, or whatever. You put on her pearls, and it was called dress up. We were pretending. We thought it was fun. Not that I ever did that, but you know what? Some people out there do. In essence, in a way, you've got somebody that is literally playing dress up to become a woman. So they're not happy in their male body. They want to be a woman, or identify as a dog or an alien or something along that line. Again, I'm not insensitive, but basically the science doesn't lie with this. No way in hell should we be allowing a biological male to compete in women's sports. Some activists actually claim that males who receive cross-sex hormones and artificially lower their testosterone levels should be allowed to compete against females. But, according to a recent study on that, it's proven that the methods do not negate the performance gap between the sexes. So forcing females to compete against males strips them of their right to a fair playing field. And again, like I just mentioned a little bit ago, women have come so far over the years with women's rights and everything in between. This is stripping them from their rights. This is stripping a biological female's right for fair competition. Why do you think the Democrats are saying, oh, wait a minute, no, we're offending the trans community. We cannot possibly offend them. Oh my God. They're trying to buy votes. They are trying to buy votes instead of actually thinking for themselves and saying, you know what, there are some things that we just can't include trans people in. Nope, they want to be everybody's friend, except for the biological males and females. Yep, because you know what? It goes to show you, if you're part of the trans community, you have more rights as biological males and females. Is this true? Is this what we're going for now? Let's look at it this way. It goes to the same thing with trans people, this whole bathroom thing. Oh my God, you've got biological men that have transitioned to women or put on a wig or grow breast or whatever, going into a regular woman's restroom, committing rape and everything in between. Seriously? If I was going to school, I wouldn't want a trans female to a male going into my restroom. I just wouldn't feel right. Locker rooms or anything else in between. And again, this is something we should be changing. So if trans people want to take place or want to be in sports, what we should really be looking for is creating a separate league for them, just like we did for Special Olympics and stuff like that. Not because they can't play the sport, but because that would be the correct thing to do. But then all of a sudden they're going to be looked at as saying, oh, wait a minute, you're segregating us. You're saying we can't compete in what we feel that we should be able to compete in. So now all we're going to do is file lawsuits and everything else in between. It's so far from the truth. And this is what we're getting away from. We have stopped being able to think clearly, and we are out to try to please everybody else instead of making the correct decision of saying, yes, we should create a trans sports league where they can compete against one another. Because let's face it, these trans male athletes into female sports are breaking all the rules. They're breaking all of the records because they have the muscle mass. They have the ability. They have the desire. It's crazy. An expert report by Dr. Gregory A. Brown, he's an exercise science professor at the University of Nebraska, basically sheds some light on how policies that allow men to compete against women actually harm female athletes. He goes on to say many who would not be considered top-tier male performers to replace the world's most skilled female athletes on the podium. For example, in 2017 alone, well over 5,000 males, including some under 18 years old, ran 400-meter times that were faster than the personal best of U.S. Olympic gold medalists Sanya Richards-Ross and Allison Felix. And Dr. Brown's report actually shows that policies allowing males to compete in women's sports would do even greater harm to female athletes in a variety of other sports as well. We are destroying women's sports by allowing this to happen. It's not fair. And you know what's going to happen? More and more women, girls, are going to opt out of sports because you know what? What's the use? If they keep allowing these biological males, who are now women, into women's sports, where's the competition? The girls have no chance at beating them. And it's freaking sad. But again, we can't get the Democrats to see this because all they want to do is buy votes. For example, and this just goes on, but Dr. Brown mentions, despite greater body weight, males have a roughly 15 to 20% jumping advantage over women. And even if male athletes are receiving androgen inhibitors and cross-sex hormones, it will not reverse the distinct advantage males have over females. Many states are jumping on the bandwagon and taking a stand for fairness in women's sports. A bill passed the House, but unfortunately, President Biden isn't going to assign. He's not going to sign it. He's not going to sign it because, you know what, to him, he's saying, oh, you know what, it discriminates against the trans community. Really? So the trans community has better rights than biological males and females. When is that right? When is that correct? When do we put the rights of one group over another? States like Mississippi, Montana, Arkansas, Florida pass legislation that keep males from competing against women. That is the way to go. It's not segregating. It's not being rude. It's not being insensitive. It's being smart. It's protecting women's sports. Now, shortly after Idaho passed the Fairness in Women's Sports Act, the American Civil Liberties Union filed a lawsuit It is attempting to strike down the law and subject female athletes to unfair competitive conditions that prioritize gender ideology over biological realities. So again, this is going to show you it doesn't matter what is being done to help female athletes from this infestation. There's always going to be people out there that file lawsuits because that's the only thing that they need to do. They feel like their rights are being infringed upon. And you know, the bad part about it is there are idiotic judges out there that will literally basically rule in favor of that because they don't want to be known as a judge that stands up against actual rights and what is right, the correct way that things should be done. It's such a sore subject. It really is. Because the way that you look at it can be from both sides of the aisle. It's the science behind it. It's the fact. It's the truth behind it that'll set you free. We need to stop being worried about offending certain groups of people and standing up for what is right in this world. I'm serious about that, gang. You cannot let your voices go unheard. If you're not happy with trans men in your little girl's restroom, stand up and say something about it. And this goes both sides of the spectrum, all right? Both trans males and trans females, because it can happen to any one of us. We're not saying that we've got to get rid of them. We're not saying that we need to segregate them. We're not saying that we're insensitive. Like I said when I first started this podcast, I am not racist. I am not against anybody of the trans community, LGBTQ, anything along that line. We are simply trying to fight for what is right. And that's the protection of women's sports. Absolutely the protection of biological women's sports. Again, we've come a long way. Women have fought for the right to vote. They are continuing the fight for their place in the workplace, for higher wages, for everything that they deserve. And in no way, shape, or form should we be allowing a biological male who is simply just playing dress up and not happy with who they are to compete in women's sports. It's not fair. It's not right. But again, our government would rather sit there and say, oh, you know what? We've got to support, Billy Joe, Jim, Bob, Susie, because biological females don't matter anymore. They don't. We've got to cater to everybody. Everybody can live in harmony. Everybody can get along. They can get together. We can all live as one. But again, they need to have their own sports center, all right? Their own sports league, Trans Women's Sports of America, or whatever. You get the general idea on this. But the science does not lie with this. Biological males should not be in women's sports at all. When you look at certain things, especially in today's world, it's difficult to imagine that there was a time when women and girls didn't have many opportunities to play sports. But there was, before the 1970s, the concept of women's sports not as widespread as what it is now. In fact, sporting events for girls were almost non-existent. So what happened in 1972 or after 1972? Congress passed a law, a piece of legislation intended to give women and girls equal opportunities in education, right? Since its passage into law, women have been given exponentially more opportunities to play organized sports. So instead of going backwards against women, we need to move forward. We need to work on this together and come up with a simple solution that allows trans people to be able to play in their respected sport, not against biological males or females, but against one another of their same sex, all right? So if you've got Leah Thomas, she is a woman, even though biological male. She could basically compete against another trans woman who was biological male and see how well she does. All right, that's the way that it should be, not with biological women. So I'm going to close with this. And again, there are so many different things that are plaguing us in this world right now. This should be a no-brainer. It shouldn't. We shouldn't have to fight about this. We shouldn't have to argue about this. Trans people, I get it. I love y'all with my heart, okay? But again, you should have to go into the bathroom that is associated with the sex you were born with. You should play in a sport in the sex that you were born with. Just because you take some performance hormones, you grow your hair, you've got breasts, you transition, whatever, it doesn't make you that actual sex. It's appearance only. And you are allowed to live life the way that you want to do it. I am not saying that you have to change that. What I am saying is what's right and what's wrong. Live your life the way you want to. All right? But don't push it on other people. And it feels like every single thing is being jammed down our throats. That we have to agree to this. We have to abide by this. This is the way it goes. No, actually it isn't. Things don't have to be that way. And you don't have to be offended because you're not getting your own way. There are ways to make it work. Let's do it. Let's protect women's sports once and for all, for the biological women that need to continue moving forward. We've come a long way. Let's keep doing it. Let's not go back. This is not the way it should be. But thanks again for, listening to episode 7 of the Woke What Cancel This podcast. I know sometimes I can ramble on, but you've got so many thoughts that rattle into your mind that you just have to get them out. You have to get them on paper, on print, on screen. That way others can kind of get into your mind. They can start understanding your way of thinking. And again, just remember, everybody out there is individual in their own way, shape, or form. You just need to be careful on how far you take that individuality, all right? So until next time, a reminder, you can find us on YouTube, Woke What Cancel This. You can also find us on Facebook, Woke What Cancel This, all one word. The views are mine and mine alone. The information is based on fact. Do your research. The internet's wonderful for more than just looking at porn, folks. Get out there, research it, understand it, come to your own conclusion. Till next time, I'm Al Lockwood.